Well, a big warm welcome back to the Health and Safety Digest, a special podcast by Astutis. And as ever, I am your host on this guide, this voyage of environmental health and safety training. Toby Howe, the digital content writer at Astutis, if I can get the words out of my mouth for this video. And welcome back to part 2 of our NEBOSH exam special with special input. Heavily requested from our viewers here on the Astutis YouTube channel for Astutis Technical Director Brenig Moore, who does stop by to finish and conclude our chat on NEBOSH exams. In this episode, we're going to be focusing on specialist courses. We're going to be offering some more kind of finite advice on the run-up to the exam, how to approach it, especially the night before. What happens after the exam, and the possibility, the very sad, tragic possibility about failing exams. What do you do after you fail an exam? So without any further ado, let's get straight into the second part of our exam NEBOSH chat with Brenig Moore. So Bren, we have a few specialist courses in the Astutis course library. One such is the NEBOSH Safety for Executives and Directors. And the reason why I bring that course to the podcast attention is for its unique approach to the exam/assessment phase. What could you tell us about that kind of approach? And what is your personal advice to learners who are approaching that phase on that course?
Okay. Yeah, well, the NEBOSH Safety for Execs and Directors is another great course. Another course I really enjoy delivering. So the opportunity to work with directors from organisations of all shapes and sizes and try to help them understand the relative importance of health and safety risk management within their organisations is something that I enjoy very much. The assessment for that particular course is actually designed in such a way that what we're expecting the learners to do is to reflect on their roles in their organisations and the learning that they've gone through during the course, and to come up with an action plan of 3 commitments that they can take back to make a difference in their own workplace. So these 3 commitments are possibly personal improvements in terms of, I think I could probably do better as a leader in the business, and I could better convince my reports and colleagues that I am taking health and safety seriously within the organisation, within the business. So we could expect some learners to come up with actions about how they improve their visibility and the way they lead by example in terms of health and safety in the workplace. Or we could be looking at organisational improvements, improvements to our management systems, our processes and so on. Actually, on reflection, I think our risk assessment approach within our organisation isn't as robust as it could be. So maybe there's something there that I want to look at to improve. So wherever it's going to come from, whether it's personal improvement or organisational improvement, we're looking at real things that we can take back to the workplace that will improve the overall management of health and safety in our organisation. And I think that's very appropriate and a very nice way of assessing whether the learners on that course have actually got what they needed to get from the experience and actually can make a bit of a positive impact when they get back to their day job.
Fingers crossed. I hope so. A left field question right now, Bren. And we often talk about the preparation of an exam, and it might be taboo, but the day before the exam, and they might be stressed. I'll be quite frank, Bren, I'm not an exam person. So speaking for myself, I would be extremely stressed, very, very daunted about the prospect of sitting an exam, culminating all that information for, a 3-hour session. So to anyone like me in that situation, what would be your advice for me or anyone else like me in the lead up to an exam?
Interesting. I mentioned earlier on, my approach has evolved quite a lot over my career. when I was a kid, when I do my O-levels, my A-levels, my university degree, I didn't really know what I was doing, I don't think, to be honest, but I sort of always felt that I should be working hard right up until the last minute, and I'd be up late into the evening cramming, and wasn't good learning. It'd be ramming things into short-term memory, hoping I could hang on to them long enough to get them on the page tomorrow, and forgotten the day after, sort of thing. Interestingly, my kids have just, my son's just finished his A-levels, my daughter's just finished her GCSEs, and they seem to be much more relaxed about things than I would have been at that age, and I did see them working. I have seen them studying, and they're both very, very bright, very good at what they do, but they certainly weren't burning the midnight oil or working really, really late. But what they do now, which is, I guess, what I evolved into over the last 30 or 40 years, is they have a much better understanding of how they learn, and they have a much better understanding of how they're going to be assessed and how to prepare for that. So for me, based on my evolution and based on what I've seen my kids doing over the last couple of years, it's back to preparation and planning, really. If you have laid out your schedule for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, depending on the scale of the challenge, before the assessment, and you've worked through all that content in a timely manner, and you've digested it, you've got your head around it, you've got that understanding, it makes sense to you, and you can get it back out again and explain it to other people. If you can arrive at the day before your assessment in that sort of shape, you've done your mock exam, you've done well in your mock exam, you know your stuff, then I think you can relax a little bit, and prepare yourself physically then for a good performance the next day. Now, a little bit of nerves is obviously to be expected if it's an important exam, if there are things riding on it like career progression and so on. A bit of nervousness is to be expected, and if you've experienced that before, you probably got your own ways of coping with that. But for me, it's about knowing that I've done all that I can, and that when I land on that day before, I'm in good shape. And then it's all about making sure I've got a good night's sleep, making sure I've got a good breakfast into me the day of the exam, making sure I'm organised in terms of where I'm taking the exam, peace and quiet, whatever you need, whatever works for you. And then you come out to the other side, I think, expecting success. That's my experience and my approach anyway.
I'm taking notes, Bren. I'm taking notes. So we've just imagined my poor kind of lead up to the exam, Bren, and you've given me all the notes I can decipher there. But let's just imagine for 1 second that we've just submitted our exam, and we're pleased with our efforts. We've done well. I've followed your lead up preparation kind of scheduled to a T, and we're relieved when it's over. But often the questions that we receive, Astutis receive, are something like, how long will it take until we know our mark? If we pass, how long will we have to wait for the certificate? And what do you have to say to those questions, Brent?
Okay, I mean, it's obviously going to vary with the awarding body and with the type of assessment that you've undertaken. So, if, for example, you were doing an IOSH managing safely, and you've just sat the end of course online test, you'll know as soon as you've completed the test whether you've passed or failed. That's all automated, and that comes through immediately. If you were doing a NEBOSH assessment, which is on the qualifications framework and has to have a degree of rigour in terms of the way it is marked and moderated and so on, there's a process that the papers go through that is going to take quite a while, actually. So NEBOSH guarantee that they will declare the results for an assessment no later than 50 working days or 10 weeks after the assessment date. So if you did your assessment this Wednesday, then broadly you've got a 10-week wait for your results to come through. Might be a little bit less than that. That's the that's the guarantee. It will be declared no later than 50 working days. If they've had a good run, they might come out after 44, 45, 46 days. So you sometimes get them a day or two early, but pretty much you're going to have that 10-week wait for any NEBOSH assessment, and it's the same for all assessments. It's always 50 working days from assessment date to guaranteed declaration of results. So on your second question, Toby, about the certificates, again, that will vary slightly depending on the awarding body and the nature of the assessment. But if you imagine that IOSH, NEBOSH, IEMA, whichever body it is notified of your result, that you have been successful in your studies and you have passed your course, then they're going to have to go through processes whereby they order hard copy certificates to be printed and to be returned to them, which can take a couple of weeks. They then bundle up their certificates by learning partner and distribute them to each learning partner, which may be a third week. We as a learning partner then will get our batch of certificates from a particular assessment. We've got to do our processes. We've got to actually get an individual certificate in an individual envelope for posting to the successful individual, and availing ourselves of the Royal Mail or whoever we're using for posting. That can take probably 4 or 5 weeks for a UK learner to get their certificate actually landing on their doorstep, and possibly 7 or 8 weeks for an international learner, depending on the journey that the certificate is going on. So I'd be prepared for a wait of 5 or 6 weeks for your certificate, maybe a little bit longer. If you're lucky, maybe a little bit shorter, but that's the sort of time frame we'd be looking at.
Brilliant. And as I say, they would be the two most pressing questions for me personally after I sat the exam. And I know personally, receiving the questions from our learners, that they are the two most pressing kind of aftercare questions that we receive. Thankfully for you, Bren, I have one last question, and you are free from this interrogation. And I'm afraid we must confront the possibility that one or two of our learners might struggle and even potentially fail. And it's a terrible thing to even contemplate. But in that instance, what is the protocol for those learners who have sadly failed their assessment or exam?
Okay, and again, there will be some variability between awarding bodies and different assessment types. But if we take NEBOSH as our benchmark again, if you sat your NG1 or IG1, if you're an international learner, then you can get, as well as your mark, you can get a breakdown of your marks from NEBOSH that will tell you how you performed on a question by question basis, which might help you. If you've still got the paper in front of you, you can go, oh, okay, it looks like I made a bit of a mess of question 2, or I did really good on question 3, or whatever it is. Maybe that will help you understand your performance a little bit better. With the NG2, IG2 practical risk assessment, you'll get your marking sheet back from the examiner, which will tell you which criteria were met and not met. And there actually is written feedback on the reverse that will explain to you why you've been held to have not met any criteria that appear to have been failed. So for a lot of learners, that level of information will be sufficient. That level of information will enable many learners to go, yeah, okay, I understand that, I can fix that, I know what I've got to do to get it right next time. And then it is just a matter of deciding, when your next assessment date is going to be, finding that information off our website, off our exam hub, and making arrangements to book on an assessment to suit. If that's not enough for you, if you're still a little bit troubled, if you're still a little bit confused, I don't really understand why I didn't get a pass for that, I felt really, really confident, then by all means get in touch. We can arrange for a tutor to review NG1, IG1 or NG2, IG2 for you and to provide some feedback. Now, we can't remark them because we're outside of the marking process and we won't have the marking schemes, but the people we use for marking are experienced NEBOSH examiners, and they'll be able to give you sensible feedback based on their experience. So if there are knowledge gaps, you wrote quite a lot on question 3, Toby, there, but you didn't really convince me that you knew much about what a negative safety culture was, for example. Then maybe you can go back to the books and restudy relevant sections. Or if it's an exam technique point, for example, if it's, you made 3 or 4 really excellent points there, Toby, but this was a 10-point question, so the 4 points you made were great and you got your 4 points, but if you want to be in the game, you need to have made another 6 points there. So often it's technique that makes the difference between success or failure. So we can facilitate that. The other thing to consider, if you are a borderline case, a marginal fail, if you're only 1 or 2% away from pass, there is naturally a degree of human variability between individual markers. A second marker might find 1 or 2 more points, or might take away 1 or 2 more points. So you never really know what the outcome of an appeal or an inquiry about results type 2 is going to be until you get it. But I would say if you were close and you were really, really confident that you should have passed, you really expected to pass, go with your gut. Maybe worth putting in an EAR type 2, getting that remark, and hoping for the best. You don't get any feedback from an EAR, and there is a time limit, as in you've got to put in your EAR request within 20 working days of the declaration of results. So you're on the clock. The help that we can provide in terms of a review and some feedback may or may not come through in good time for you to put an EAR in. So again, that's a judgment that the individual learner would have to make sooner rather than later. But they're broadly the options, Toby. You'll get some information from NEBOSH, which will help to a degree. You can request more information from us at Astutis as your learning partner, and we are happy to provide additional feedback and try to get you in good shape for a resubmission or a resit. Or if you're borderline, think about whether an appeal is going to be worthwhile.
Brenig, thank you ever so much for taking us through those, and thank you again for your time. A big thank you to Astutis Technical Director Brenig Moore for stopping by the Health and Safety Digest and really lifting the lid and helping us understand, for better and for worse, how to maximise our chances at NEBOSH exams, and of course all the questions that come with it. If you haven't watched part 1, there will be a link in the description where we talk about more of the broader topics around NEBOSH exams. But if you found this useful, please do give a like and a subscribe. And of course, if you have any further questions concerning your examinations, please do leave a comment, or indeed contact me directly at toby.howell@astutis.com, and we will get answers to you as soon as we can. So thank you very much for watching. You can find us everywhere. Just type in Astutis on all social media platforms and you should probably find us. Until then, thank you very much for watching. Speak to you soon. Stay safe.